This is the Wednesday, February 17th meeting of the Community Services and Personnel Committee meeting. I will call the meeting to order. Roll call tonight. We have Greg Burnett, Dominique Johnson, Tom Keegan, Diana Revolus, Kadeem Roberts, and myself, Barbara Smith. Nick Sachinelli is unable to be here tonight. First item on the agenda is public comments. Do we have anyone who would like to speak tonight?
We have 3 attendees as of right now. If anyone would like, we do have 1 person. If anyone else would like to speak, please raise your hand electronically and I will unmute you. The first person we have is Diane Lauricella. Diane, go ahead.
Good evening. Just for your information, Madam Chair, the connection just occurred like a second ago, so people may not have it. I didn't even know if it was coming through. So it's the wonders of digital connections. So that's.
We got you, Diane. We can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Anyway, for the record, Diane Lauricella. I just have 2 quick items that are on the agenda. The first is the minutes, the review of the minutes. I just wanted to say that I'm very pleased that we appear to be moving forward on the equity and justice entity, would be it a commission or a task force. I know the mayor said last Tuesday that he is looking at that. The thing is, I asked, where is the sense of urgency here? George Floyd's unfortunate death occurred last spring or summer, and currently it is well known in town, I'm a member of this group, that the NAACP is having problems. So I think that there are a lot of important topics that aren't being discussed in a timely fashion. So I urge the leadership of this council to move this along a lot faster than it is. I am not one that believes we need a specialist first, that I believe there are members of the clergy and certainly members on this council who are very good at beginning discussions with groups of people, so that I just think there's been a lot of silence on this topic for months. And I ask that this be wrapped up soon, but I'm not sure that I agree that it took this long. Number 2, and lastly, your item on the agenda relating to the bonus pool. Over the years, I have come to personnel committee meetings about this time of year when people are getting ready to discuss the potential bonuses for the ordinance list. I believe tonight's agenda item relates to ordinance list employees. This particular rite of passage, annual rite of passage, used to be a lot more transparent for the public in order to allow for praise and criticism of people that are well paid by the city taxpayers. I do believe in the past, especially when under Mr. Esposito and Mr. Moshe, there used to be a lack of transparency about allowing the public to help evaluate whether the senior officials were performing well. And currently, the feeling was, and I know that this committee tried to make sure that the standards that the mayor was utilizing to assign bonuses was more standardized and was reviewed at least by the council. But what I'm saying tonight is, I really don't believe that it is fair that this particular important item is being sent to executive committee. I do believe that the public deserves the right to understand what are the standards, what in the past has been assigned to senior officials. It is city money, it's taxpayer money. Where can we get a copy of how much extra money has been given to ordinance list employees in the past? And I do believe there should be a public hearing so that the public has a right to issue praise and criticism for these ordinance list employees. I ask, get transparency back. And I do believe the public has the right to know, because we need to know, are we getting the right bang for the buck? I know there are a lot of very, very hardworking people at City Hall, and in our senior staff as well. But there are some that do not have the right, in my opinion, attitude towards the public and would rather the public remain silent. I believe that could be they could be trained to care more about the public's right to to participate. So I ask again that this not go to executive committee unless individual bonuses are being discussed, but that the process be more public and that the public be involved in issuing praise and criticism. I thank you. Stay warm and safe, and I thank you for your time, for my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lauricella. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the meeting of January 20th, 2020. Do I have a motion? Ms. Johnson moves the item. I have one minor correction, which is under attendance others. Maria's name is, there's just like a transposition of letters. It says Mayra instead of Maria. So that's the only, I could get into a thing about Oxford commas, but I'm not going to go there. But yeah, aside from, that's the only thing I see. Did anyone else have any additions or corrections? Okay, seeing none. All in favor of the minutes as amended? Raise your hand. Aye. Oh, Mr. Roberts, I can't see you. Say aye, please, or all in favor?
Aye, yes, yes,
Okay.
aye.
All in favor. All right, so that is unanimous. Okay. And the next item on the agenda is a discussion. Community Services Department. First, we'll have general updates from Lamont Daniels, and second, a presentation, which is an update on new operations and workflow of Youth Services Department. And we have David Walenchik with us, who is the Director of Youth Services, along with Maria Escalera. So I'll turn that over to you now, Lamont, for the update.
Thank you, and good evening, Madam Chair and their Common Council, and to those that are watching. It's my pleasure always again to be with you on these Wednesday nights. First, to our community, I just would like to remind everyone through you, Madam Chair, that those that are watching, that the City of Norwalk continues to partner with the Connecticut Food Bank Food Share for those that are in need of help with food every Wednesday from 9 a.m. to 12 noon, or while supplies last. Your city hosts a drive-through food program at Calf Pasture Beach. This is open to all residents and surrounding communities. And today we served well over 1,300 families in 28 degrees weather. It was cold out there. And we had special guest, Lieutenant Governor and the Mayor with us this morning. I also want to, and we will continue to do this as long as the resources and the need is there. And also want to share for those who may wish to volunteer, and many of you have volunteered, and I want to thank Councilman Burnett as well for volunteering quite often. Thank you for your volunteer time, because we can't do this without volunteers. That folks can go on the Connecticut Food Bank website, and you will see Norwalk Calf Pasture, and you can volunteer. And again, I want to thank all of our Norwalk volunteers, because we could not do this without you. Every Wednesday at Calf Pasture Beach, we need well over 40 people, 40 hands to volunteer. And Norwalk comes out strong to support this effort, to serve their fellow constituents, to say, hey, I care about you and I'm going to help. So thank you to that. Madam Chair, I also want to remind our viewers that we are in partnership with the Norwalk Senior Center and the Senior Services Coordinating Council. We all know that we are now vaccinating our community. We are now 65 and up, and the city has partnered with both the Norwalk Senior Center and the Senior Services Coordinating Council to be our call center for seniors. So whether you are a member of these organizations or you're a senior or 65 and older and just need help of how to log on, someone can walk through with you on the system to get vaccinated and use the BAM system. We recognize that some of our residents may not have the internet or may not have the resources to do so. And we're encouraging folks to use the telephone number that the state provides. But for those that can use the internet, we want to encourage you to reach out locally to the Norwalk Senior Center. And the numbers are 203-847-3115, and that's in English. And in Spanish, 203-299-1500. And then for the Senior Services Coordinating Council, that number is 203-434-1876. Thank you. Madam Chair, those are my updates. Would you like me to move into our prepared presentation?
Just one, I did want to, as Ms. Laura Cella brought up the question about
Yes.
the Equity and Justice for All Commission, I did just want to add that, Ms. Laura Cella, we did receive a brief update prior to going live tonight. We are in the process and we are very close. You should be hearing some good news. What do you think, Mr. Daniels? And within a couple of weeks?
Oh, I don't like putting dates on things.
No, we are very much aware
Very close.
that the community is, very, I don't want to say anxious, but we want this to happen yesterday. And so, but it is a process and we want to do it right. And so just wanted to bring that up. That was all. So I think that we can move on to youth services.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair, again. And so to the committee, about 1.5 years ago, I was introduced to you all as Norwalk's first Chief of Community Services. And I shared with you my approach to this new position and this new department. And you can recall, I reported that I met with over 40 of Norwalk's nonprofit leaders, and I continue to meet with them today. Over the past 1.5 years, I participated in organizational staff meetings, board meetings, just meetings and meetings and meetings. But it was important to understand the nonprofit community, the services they provide, and partner with them of what is the best way for this new department to support and bring value to the work that they're doing. The goal was to hear and understand the needs of our community. The goal was for me to support the great work and to align what I thought was best with their goals. And so tonight, I would like to share with you the outcome of many of those meetings over the past 1.5 years, particularly our youth services department. I met with one-on-ones and listening tours, and even have met retired employees or retired program managers who worked in Norwalk and understand and offered me a perspective around youth services in our city. Before we begin our presentation, I want to acknowledge the great work that Mr. David Wilnichek has provided many, many years. David, you can share how many years you were here if you want to, but he has led the Norwalk Youth Services to where it is today. And I want to thank him for all his work over the years. But today is a new day. We know COVID has really shed a light on our community, particularly our most vulnerable, our most fragile. And in my role as the Chief of Community Services, I'm looking at every department to look at not only the resources that we provide, but what is the best way to utilize our employees, the expertise, and the work that we do to improve all outcomes for children and families and all residents in our city. So tonight you're going to hear what that process has been, what it's going to look like in our future. So tonight I'm going to start us off, but you'll hear from David momentarily, and then you'll hear from Maria Escalera, the Human Service Director, who's also been a part of this reshaping and how we will serve and support our youth. So let's begin. I'm going to share my screen. Momentarily. Okay. Can everyone see that? Can everyone see this?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, great.
Okay.
So David and
Yes.
Maria, you all, I'll start the beginning and then you just tell me next slide. Well, here we are, myself, Maria, and David. This is the youth services team. If you recall, I had this slide up when I first met you downstairs in the personnel area. Let me just move some of this over because the way it's set up, it's in the way. And so we're 1.5 years later, and I said to you that the Community Service Department is well positioned to make a significant contribution to assist how residents seek and learn about social services and resources. We also talked about that I wanted to deliver on an actionable item urged by the nonprofit community and its leaders. And they said, the value that this department can bring is to establish coordinated partnerships and efforts to support the safety net of the nonprofit. And then lastly, to become that front door to serve as an access point for the social service information and resources in the city of Norwalk. I'm proud to say that we are well on our way to deliver on these items. So today we're going to talk about the reshaping and reorganization of the Youth Services Department. Since I've been here, I did a thorough review of the city's youth services current service delivery model. I met with both youth services staff. I met with local child, youth, and family service agencies and their leadership and organizations that serve Norwalk's youth. Also met with agency staff, and they were invited to share their perspective and offer feedback about the current services, the role the city, around the current services, youth services play in the city. Part of that listening tour, we heard and we learned a lot. One, it was clear what services are available and how residents can access them. Two, we also learned that in 2020-21, there is a full array of youth mental health services that do exist in the city, and they do serve a diversity of community. And during these conversations, we also paid special attention on the emphasis on the ability to pay, and that was well discussed. And so what have we learned? That there is a role for the youth services in that we can help break down silos and foster a better collaboration between the systems interacting with Norwalk's youth. We also can build an awareness about youth services and resources available to them in the city. And you're going to hear about what this all looks like. And then lastly, in this role, I find myself being that thought leader and kind of looking at it from a high level overview around identifying what are those gaps, what are those needs, and how can we pull together the community and the resources allotted from the city side, but also from the nonprofit side to provide the best and intervene when appropriate. So what is a youth services borough? I'm not going to read the entire thing, but what is important is that this is actually legislation. The youth services borough is an actual law in the state of Connecticut that has been acted that asks each city and municipality to create a youth services borough. And under David's leadership, our youth services department has served as the youth services bureau. In Connecticut, we have a lot of communities do it differently. Some municipalities have nonprofits become the youth services bureau. In Norwalk, our youth services, which is run by the municipality, is our youth services bureau, and I would like to maintain it and keep it that way. The next slide, which is what you're going to hear about after David speaks, is in the legislation, it's very broad. The youth services in legislation is a very broad definition. And you'll see that I outline youth service bureaus are responsible for assessing the needs of youth, identifying gaps in services, and coordinating services for youth in order to fill gaps and avoid duplication of services. This is the area where I would like and have proposed to the mayor, which he has approved, to move the youth services in this direction. And then you can see the second bullet, working cooperatively with our school personnel, our police, community resources. David has done a phenomenal job. Now with the onset of bringing Maria, we're really able to take the partnerships, our resources to the next level to serve our youth in the city. So I'm going to turn it over to David. He's going to walk you through the history, tell you what's been going on. And then Maria, she's new. The department is changing. She's going to tell you where we're going. Welcome, David.
Thank you. So as Lamont mentioned earlier, the Norwalk Youth Services Department is the designated YSB for the state of Connecticut. There's something like 140 youth service bureaus around the state. Most of them are resident within community youth services departments. We've been around since the early 70s. We've evolved over the years, but we've primarily functioned as the coordinating entity for the social and emotional well-being for youth and families in the city. Currently, we've been providing direct youth counseling services to youth and their families, youth development programming, juvenile justice programming, also known as our Juvenile Review Board, and restorative justice. And we've also participated in local, regional, and state initiatives related to youth. In 2005, Mayor Knopp formed a Blue Ribbon Commission comprised of community members, common council members, various stakeholders to explore whether or not Norwalk Youth Services Department should continue to provide counseling services, whether or not we should begin to charge for those services. At the present time and at that time as well, services were provided at no fee, and any other recommendations that might arise from the work of that commission. When the commission wrapped up in 2006, Mayor Moshe had come into office. The recommendations from the committee were delivered to him, and the recommendations at the time were that direct youth counseling services be retained, that we not charge for services. One of the other recommendations was that we strengthen the Youth Advisory Board to provide a greater voice for youth in the community. And one of the other things that came out of that Blue Ribbon Commission was that the department was under-resourced for the amount of work we were doing. At the time, it was determined services being provided weren't being duplicated elsewhere in the community, and that these services represented a niche service to what else was going on in the community, an adjunct type of service. Currently, we provide counseling to youth and families. The state defines youth as those between, this is actually a typo, I think we forgot to fix this, but youth are defined as those between the ages of 11 and 18. Currently, our clinicians are master's level, MFTs, marriage and family therapists. We've also had social workers and licensed professional counselors in the past as our clinicians, but everybody's always been master's level. Services are provided on a no-fee basis. We get referrals directly from the community, schools, the police, the Juvenile Review Board, and a large number of self-referrals. Typically, the kind of issues we've dealt with are parent-child conflicts, school performance, truancy, delinquency issues, which could be things like running away, being beyond control, minor criminal offenses like shoplifting, etc. Substance abuse. We kind of see the whole gamut of anything that typically adolescents are dealing with. Our Juvenile Review Board program, which we also refer to as our restorative justice programming. Just to give you a quickie history of this, the Norwalk used to have a juvenile court, and typically juveniles who were arrested for a minor offense or truancy or what's called a FWISN referral, which is a family with service needs. That's usually when the family would go to the juvenile court and say, help, my kid's out of control, I need help. It was sort of a voluntary petition for services. All of those things in the past were referred directly to the juvenile court. Norwalk no longer has a juvenile court. That was rolled into the Bridgeport court system. But we also saw the emergence of JRBs, not only within Connecticut, but around the country. And the idea is that we really want to keep kids out of the juvenile justice system because it puts them at greater risk to be involved in the adult justice system. So the Juvenile Review Board or the restorative justice programming is really about early intervention. It's a court diversion type program. It is a completely voluntary program. Typically, when a referral comes in, our staff does an assessment of the case, what its needs are, and all of this is done prior to the family having a hearing. Then a hearing is conducted. There's a community panel that does that. We usually have representation from juvenile probation, police officers, somebody from a behavioral health care provider. Sometimes I sit on the panel. We usually have somebody from juvenile probation there. And then we may add other panel members as relevant to the case. So they have a hearing very much like what a hearing would have been like had it gone to juvenile court. The difference is it's really more rehabilitative focused. It's more about what does this kid need, not let's be punitive. And as a result of that, a plan is developed that the family can either accept and sign up to, or they can, depending on the type of referral, they can reject that and opt to go to court. That would be only for a delinquency referral, and when a youth was arrested for an arrestable offense like shoplifting, a minor assault, something like that. Any serious arrests would probably still go directly to juvenile court. If it's a truancy referral or a family with service needs referral, if the family doesn't want to do the JRB program, then nothing really happens. Those referrals used to get sent to juvenile court if they didn't want to utilize the program, but that's been changed at the state level. So unfortunately for those cases, if the family doesn't opt to participate in the JRB program, then it sort of falls through the cracks more or less. And that's a gap that we're going to have to look at in the future. Again, the overall intent of this program is to keep youth out of the juvenile and eventually adult court systems. Some other things we do, we have a middle school youth development program known as Peer Connection. It's very activity oriented. We used to do that at City Hall one night a week. Because of COVID, we've been doing the program virtually. The town of Westport and Weston also contract to use our Norwalk Juvenile Review Board. We also participate in a variety of activities to support youth in the community as they come up, things like health fairs, shop with the cop, youth surveying, youth engagement activities, a variety of things that come up through the year.
Excuse
Do
me,
you want me
thank
to
you.
pick?
No,
Do you
I'm
want
sorry,
Maria
no,
to
I
pick
got
up
it.
this?
Yeah,
Okay.
so Maria is going to share, you heard what the current service model has been. Maria is going to then pick up where we have been talking, where we have moved, and where we are going with the youth services for the future.
Can I just ask a question before we move on?
Sure.
A question of David. Because the high schools have been using the restorative justice model, a lot of teachers have been trained in restorative justice. And I imagine it's a little hard to assess with COVID situation, but because of that, have you noticed, are you getting less referrals from the high school because they're very focused on the same type of thing? Have you noticed a difference in the number of referrals?
Overall, our referrals have been down over the past year a little bit, but actually they've started to pick up quite a bit. I think as people have adjusted to the reality of COVID, and hopefully over the next several months that will change, but we have started to notice the referrals picking up because everything's being done here. The assessment is being done virtually. The assessments are done virtually. The hearings are being done virtually. Yeah.
Any other questions, or we can move on, Madam Chair?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. So you all were introduced to Maria now. She's part of our team. So Maria Escalier, the Human Services Director, and the Youth Services is now under, I'm not sure if you're aware of that, under the Human Services Department. And so Maria is going to talk about what's changing and what the reshaping and redesign is going to look like. Good evening, Maria.
Thank you, Lamont, and thank you, everyone. Dave gave us a history of, and really, youth services, the Youth Services Department and staff have been doing an amazing job to support the youth of Norwalk. And so what's changing? Lamont, explained when he first joined the city, he did a listening tour and spoke with members of the community and service providers. And when I joined in September, I continued that work to really understand what resources were available to youth, where were the gaps, and where are the opportunities to be able to support youth, the Norwalk youth of today. So what's changing? We're going to be shifting from a long-term counseling model to a collaborative youth development model focused on 5 pillars, and I will go through those 5 pillars. We are going to provide supportive care coordination with a referral and information focus. We looked at and contacted many of the mental health providers in the city of Norwalk to really understand what is the access, what are the challenges, what are any barriers that we may face. And we got a really positive response that there are many resources that have developed over the years here in Norwalk to really support our youth's mental health needs. We want to really strengthen the restorative justice principles and practices to include youth advocacy, focus on youth leadership development to include life skills, and intentionally joint strategies addressing trends and issues facing Norwalk youth with youth serving agencies and stakeholders. So this is, we've developed an approach of identifying really 5 pillars to help us focus and really utilize the resources to really best meet the needs of the youth for today. So our first pillar is restorative justice. We have information and referral services, community education, advocacy and leadership, and then really building a very strong collaborative relationship with the Parks and Recs department within City Hall. And the idea is that we have so many resources and expertise and specialties within City Hall, within our Youth Services Department, and we're hearing from community partners on their resources and the strengths within the community. And so, you know, these 5 pillars are gonna help us drive and focus on how do we better support the Norwalk youth. So the restorative justice pillar or focus is really to look at our current JRB as David had explained, and to help high-risk youth who are referred by law enforcement, school personnel, community-based organizations, and their families to prevent future contact with the juvenile justice system. So we're going to continue that program. Norwalk has a very strong JRB, a very good relationship with the Norwalk Public Schools and the police department to really identify youth who, you know, fall off the path of success and really help guide them back and get them back on the right track. And so what we'll be looking at is how can we better support that program? How can we expand it so that we can start to talk about when we start to see kids who haven't really gotten into trouble, but are starting to exhibit risky behaviors, and building that communication so that when someone in the school, you know, starts to get concerned about someone, that they refer the student or the youth to youth services so that we can start working with that young person before they even get to the JRB. And then also thinking about what are our resources so that when someone does successfully complete their contract with the JRB, that we are then able to connect them to resources, mentors, opportunities to again help keep them on the right track to success and however they define success. The second pillar of information and the referral services, we're going to take and really utilize our clinicians to be able to do an assessment and an intake when someone contacts our office looking for mental health services so that we can complete the assessment and really connect the youth and the families to the appropriate resources within the community, expediting the referrals that really do need to be expedited, and just really ensuring that that referral process happens seamlessly and that we're really matching the needs of the youth with the appropriate services. And so we met again with the mental health services providers in the community to understand how can we make sure that if on Monday we get a phone call from a family that needs mental health services, that we're able to get them into one of our community providers. And so we've gotten a really great response to be able to make sure that that happens seamlessly. Community education is services that educate and raises community awareness about issues central to healthy youth development. And so really being able to take a role, you know, the city taking a role to start looking at what are the trends that we're seeing within the community and how can we pull together resources to be able to provide education, learning opportunities, to help support families who have youth and the youth themselves. How can we take what's if there's a concern that's happening at the schools, how can we collaborate with Norwalk Public Schools to support their efforts in issues that they're seeing within the public school system? How do we ensure that all children from birth till they get to the Norwalk Public Schools, that they have access to early childhood programs, and that we are keeping that information up to date? The fourth pillar is advocacy and leadership. Since I started in September, I have been overwhelmed with the work that community partners have been doing to really elevate the voices of youth, really engaging young people today and giving them the platform to speak up and talk about what are the challenges that they're facing, what are the concerns that they have, what do they want to see in their city, and how can, and for the city to take a role of not only listening, but engaging the youth and taking action and being able to bring them in, having them sit at the table and giving us real feedback of, what do we need to do to be able to support the youth. So, we're hearing from, we're looking to update our advisory board, our youth advisory board, so that we ensure that we have enough representation from the youth and our community partners. We're looking to utilize and partner with community resources, and have really learned that there are a lot of leadership and advocacy opportunities. Looking at the youth town halls that are sponsored and led by the city, the Center for Youth Leadership and Norwalk Acts, looking at the Timothy Project out of Cornerstone Church, and just really there's so many opportunities for youth to get involved and really pay it forward and help the city of Norwalk. And I think in the city's role is really to be able to hear what is being said and how do we bring them into the fold to be able to make the changes. And that will affect not only the city, but also, opportunities to connect them to help make changes at the state level and beyond. And through the leadership and advocacy is really also being able to open up doors and create opportunities for mentorship and internships and workforce development. So really just how can we build up the youth for today to help the city move forward. And then the relationship and the partnership with Parks and Recs. Parks and Recs has a robust program and so many programs for the youth. And so how do we, again, take a holistic approach to when a family contacts youth services, is that we're not only, connecting them to mental health services and providing education and trainings, but how do we help engage them and connect them to the wonderful programs that are out of Parks and Recs. And so really being able to build a healthy development in young people. And so really it's just, overall, we want to build a strong collaborative relationship with our community partners, Norwalk Public Schools, to really support all of today's Norwalk youth, and ensuring that every young person has access to all the resources and opportunities that the city has to offer. And again, we've just learned that there are so many rich opportunities and resources within the city. And so really our focus again is restorative justice, our JRB, expanding to other populations when youth or someone in the community identifies someone who's, just getting involved with the wrong groups or just needs some extra supports, providing information and referrals using our clinical staff to connect young people and families to the mental health resources, providing community education through workshops, initiatives, and any technical supports. Advocacy and leadership is, really developing our Mayor's Youth Council, the Youth Community Advisory Council, getting involved in policy and research, understanding the trends and patterns of youth experiences, and developing youth employment and life skills. And then again, really building that relationship with and partnership with Parks and Recs to working together to support a healthy quality of life for our youth.
Okay, so this is me, sorry. All this technology. So what does this all mean? So in terms of the reorganization, the current changes do not require additional funding. However, we will be exploring grant opportunities to enhance and maximize this new structure. The youth services is now becoming a significant gatekeeper to all things youth. We will be that front door. This whole process has been done collaboratively, both internally with youth services, Maria, David, and the team, but also externally with the youth service organizations throughout the city. And then we have established a really strong partnership, strengthening relationships with our Norwalk Public Schools. It's just the stars are aligning, in my opinion, in just terms of how we're able to do this work, because we really need everyone, and everyone has a role. So with our Norwalk Public Schools, with Mr. Martinez, who is now the Director of Counseling and Social Services at the school, just been amazing. We're all no stranger to Norwalk. Ask the work that Jennifer Barahona is doing. We're really working in synergy and alignment, and then bringing on a constant basis our youth and family service agencies, community youth and residents, talking to them. And then lastly, we want to promote more of the restorative justice, because we don't want to duplicate services. And from the assessment and talking with the community, the city of Norwalk, the city of Norwalk is the only organization that provides the JRB and restorative justice. So we really see that as an opportunity to expand. We really see it as an opportunity to ensure that when our young people are in trouble, not only will they come to the city through services, but they will be served well, and they will be served well with a fantastic team, but also we'll be able to connect the dots to other services. They need more than just tell them you're in trouble. What do you do? And so David and the team is really expanding that work, and we're looking forward to do that.
Can I add something real quick,
Go
Lamont,
for
to
it.
what you said? So something else I think it's important to know regarding the restorative justice juvenile JRB programming. Currently, the state provides funding for 4 JRB programs. I think it's Hartford, Bridgeport, New Haven, and I believe Waterbury. But there's a lot of advocacy work going on through our Connecticut Youth Services Association, which is our statewide advocacy group that we're affiliated with, to create a funding stream from the state to fund all juvenile review board programs around the state. Because most communities like Norwalk, first of all, almost the youth service bureaus are sort of the placement for juvenile review board programs around the state. And so there's been a lot of advocacy saying, hey, there's all these communities doing this. Why are only the 4 big cities getting that funding? Why aren't other municipalities getting funding for that activity? Because we are in essence taking a tremendous amount of workload off of the juvenile court system. All of this work used to be done to the juvenile court system. It's now being done within the community locally, as it should be. But a lot of us are asking the question and advocating for, there has to have been savings here. Let's realign that financing with where the work is being done. So I think that's important to recognize as well.
Thanks, David. So you can see this is the new org structure. It's kind of still developing and morphing, but we're really looking to expand how we connect and engage our community. And so I'll provide the slide deck definitely to you all afterwards so you can look at it. And so we shift. And I think the other piece, to Maria's point, we're looking at the community services department as one department with many arms, the health department, the early childhood. So if there's an early childhood child, we're going to ask, do you have any adolescents? Are you aware of youth services? Are you aware of the service array that's happening in the city? Hey, are you aware that there's a parks department? Our parks departments offer this. So really, once we come in contact with any family, we'll be able to connect them to the other services, both internally, what we actually provide as direct services, but also become that pipeline to the other services, because that's what we do now. We know who the organizations are. We are building that system around the community resource hub. So we really, it's really going to be a game changer of how we interact, but more importantly, how our residents can count on the youth services and other departments in the community service as that go-to place to say, when I need help or I want to learn more about, I know exactly where to go and I know who can help me. And this is it. Thank you very much. I'll stop sharing and yield back to you, Madam Chair. Thank you. And thank you, Maria and David.
Thank you for that presentation. Anyone have any questions? Mr. Burnett?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Super great presentation. Very, very excited to see this. My question is twofold. Looking at the 5 pillars, we have the justice, peace, and the information referral services. Those are existing as is, correct? To some degree?
To some degree, yes. Yes,
Okay.
we're changing the role of the clinical team. They won't be doing the counseling, they'll be doing the intake and assessment, as Maria mentioned.
So the community education, the advocacy and leadership, and the parks and recreation, are those services being provided elsewhere in the city today and moving into this department? I'm not quite clear how, if or are they new services that we're offering?
That's a great question. So you saw on the 5 pillars, we put parks as partners. That's under Nick Roberts. And so and we know our park department provides a lot of services to the youth. However, historically or in a formal way, we have not been together. So it's not moving the department, but really making a concerted effort to align our goals. And if they're going to serve Norwalk's adolescents, in my opinion, the youth services should be at that table and vice versa. So it's really around just shifting how we work together.
Okay, so that's the part I wasn't clear on.
Sure.
How do we avoid duplication? If those 3 parts of the pillar are being covered somewhere else in the city today, and now we're building them as pillar 3, 4, and 5 under youth services under your department, how do we sure we're not duplicating efforts and I'll say, lack of a better term, double booking and costing the city twice as much for the same services?
Oh, no, sir, Mr. Burnett, we're not costing the city anything. And thank you for clarity, because as we continue to articulate and share the message, we want to make sure that we clear. So when you see parks as department, that's under Nick Roberts, as I mentioned. So Nick will still be doing what he's doing. The point of saying that we are together as one is that you all should be familiar with, we don't want departments working in silos. So for example, so let's say David, we're working with youth services. Our families want to know what service are provided. Presently, we would have to say, we don't know. So having a concern, being aligned with what Nick is doing, aligning some of our goals, aligning our resources. So just putting our monies together to identify what possibilities we can do, both from a youth services development perspective, but also from a youth social, emotional, and physical activity development perspective. That's the goal and that's the intention and how we will work together. But it's not moving a department or doing what Nick does. Nick will still maintain everything he's doing. It's just bringing a philosophy and approach as one.
And if I can just jump in, so
Please.
Thinking about when Lamont started this presentation, and one of his goals is that community services becomes the door for resources within the community. So if we have a family, so historically, if someone contacts youth services, it's either that they're interested in mental health services, or they're interested in the JRB program, or, looking for resources within the community. And so what we want to be able to do is when a family contacts youth services, and they are connected to a clinician who does a needs assessment, they can start really looking at it, and taking a systems approach of understanding what is it that the family needs. So if mom says, I have a 16-year-old who's just really giving me a hard time, and I want to get them connected to mental health services, that they also go beyond that and ask, what other children are in the home, and how else can we help support that family system? And so if we identify that there's younger kids in the family, how do we connect them to the early childhood program? If they're not aware of the Parks and Recs program, instead of just transferring them over to Parks and Recs, is really being able to talk about what programs are available, how do they go about registering, and then doing this warm handoff to Parks and Recs, since we've been able to collaborate, to being able to connect the family to the programs available.
I think, go ahead.
And so then this approach really, it's the same idea with community education is really having an understanding, looking at what are the trends, and then how can we take a proactive approach to addressing any gaps or trends that community providers are seeing, community members are seeing, families are seeing, so that when they call any of us, we can, and we say, Mr. Burnett, you get a call, and then Mr. Roberts gets a call, and it's related to a similar concern in the community. We can then take on that role to start looking at, what exactly is going on. Are our community partners hearing this? And then what role does the city take in saying, there's been an uptick in substance use? Looking at our community partners and saying, can we come together, right? Can these organizations come together to really address what the trends that we're seeing? And the city taking on that role of coordinating, of pulling together the resources, rather than the city developing a substance use program and administrating that, but looking at seeing what are the resources in the community, how can we bring them together? Really similar to what Lamont has done with our food access program, is bringing together all of the food resource organizations that provide food resources and access, and bringing them together to be able to support the community's needs. And so we're just looking at taking youth services and saying, let's have these focus areas, and then identifying what are the community partners and resources that we can go to say, we're seeing this, how can you help us? If a family calls, that it's that we're able to help them in a more holistic way, rather than transferring them to to another department, or giving them a list of resources, but really being able to guide them through that. So I hope
Thanks,
that
Maria.
helps.
Yeah, because it just triggers something, and it's because, as I said, it's an approach. So I think this example will kind of make it clear. So we are the social service, mental health, emotional support door that we will be engaging youth, right? And so if we use the parks example, we know that kids who are struggling with social emotional, it will be wonderful to get them connected to physical activities, right? So, but we know that the kids that the young people that we work, they may not automatically go through parks and rep for services or to get connected. So it's through the youth services kind of door that we can then have conversation with our parks department, because we're interdepartmental, say, wouldn't it be wonderful to offer something around young people who are struggling with these issues? So these would just be collaborations and partnerships, not that I own it or our department owns it. It's just bringing the parks to the table because they are serving Norwalk's youth, and it's about a strategy. So there's the gymnastics and the lifeguard stuff that they do, but then there's this other piece. What about our most vulnerable, our young people who are not automatically connected to parks? And Nix has been very open to figure out, are we really serving all Norwalk youth? There's the youth that's going to automatically be served, but we know, and since I've been here a year and a half, there still are a lot of youth that are not connected, that are not served. So really looking at a multi approach around what do we have to offer and coming to the table as one, i.e. the Parks Department, to figure out what about these youth, or how could we work with these youth? And then the Parks Department come up with some ideas. We wouldn't necessarily come up with the ideas, but having that direct communication and formal relationship, and that just doesn't exist right now. So we kind of put it and say, hey, we would like to add you all to kind of the work we're doing, and that's what we're doing. So Nick and I are talking a lot. I hope that makes sense.
Yes, it does. And one more last question on that same thought. So I envision these 5 pillars kind of being a one-stop shopping for youth. And in line with what we're hearing from the Board of Education, to possibly have a welcome center in some shape or form, which will be one-stop shopping for youth also. Do you see yourself being housed in the same place as the welcome center? So there's one door that a Norwalk person goes through for all things youth, whether it's education, youth services, it's all one door, because I see some fragmentation between what the Board of Ed might be trying to create in terms of a one-stop shopping and what we're trying to create as a youth one-stop shopping.
Yeah, I have not been briefed on the specifics of what the Board of Ed is planning to do, Mr. Burnett, so I don't feel comfortable speaking
Okay,
to
no
articulate an
problem.
opinion on what they're doing.
Mr. Keegan, you had a question?
Yeah, Madam Chair, not really a question, just a point of information. The youth sports leagues, of which Councilman Roberts is a product, those are pretty much privately run. I'm not sure everyone understands that. And I just was curious what your relationship was with some of these organizations, be it baseball, Cal Ripken Little League, Babe Ruth League, the football program, et cetera, et cetera. That's just something to explore. But something else that I've been thinking of a little bit, more so about our justice and equity program. And this may be something for David. Have we ever thought of in connection with the police department, a youth citizens police academy, where you bring high school aged kids into
Yeah, the police have a youth, they have something like that, a youth.
they have a what they call
like a cadet program.
Cadet program, correct?
Yeah.
But that's like long-term and a big commitment. I'm talking about a 6 or 8 week gig. We do it in Greenwich, where the kids come in and they go into various departments of the police department, be it the Marine Division, the Detective Division, emergency services, whatever's available. And they actually learn what the cops are doing on a daily basis, and they get to meet these police officers, and they meet them in a whole different type of a situation. And what we've learned in Greenwich is it creates a real mutual respect and appreciation between the two groups. And I don't know if that's something
that wouldn't necessarily be a bad idea to follow up on. I will tell you, we have youth who come through our restorative justice programming. Sometimes, depending on what the case is, youth will be asked to do a certain amount of community service. And we've had a lot of community service opportunities at the police department pre-COVID, because we're not going to put youth in a situation with COVID, in a live situation, but they were doing work at the police department. Sometimes it was, I know it's not going to sound glamorous, but sometimes they were washing police cars or doing other light duty work for the police, but it also gave them an opportunity to meet with and interact with the police and not see them as just, the enforcers out there, but also to experience them in a different role. But certainly the idea you've proffered here is something we could look at and follow up on. It's not necessarily a bad idea. Councilman Roberts?
No.
Ms. Revelous has been waiting. Let's.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Thank you. Quite honestly, to
to, on what you guys were just saying, I think the police officer should be the ones doing it, not the students. I think actually maybe we should get our officers to come out kind of like without the suits and everything and kind of volunteer to get to know our community and our kids, vice versa. Then we always want to get it to them, but I just would love to get them out of the office and get them to our kids in a more, just like you're part of the community. But my question really was, is there still a great disproportionality to the students they're serving?
At least historically, when we look at because we do keep a lot of statistics, the youth that come through our department that we've served for behavioral health services, for restorative justice services, it very much, if you look at the percentage of African-American or Black students, Hispanic students, and white students, what we see through office very much mirrors the equivalent percentages within the school system. So we haven't seen a lopsided grouping for the people who are seeking services. We have seen changes over the year. Obviously in Norwalk, the Hispanic Latino population has grown. And so we've seen, we've seen when we look at, who are we serving, they've become a larger percentage of who we're serving because they've become a larger percentage of the population in Norwalk. But we haven't seen, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry, you can.
Yeah, so our numbers pretty much mirror. We haven't seen a lopsided thing in terms of people who've sought services through our department.
Okay, my question, the reason why I would ask that to bring it back is just because from conversations that I've had with parents, schools, students, children to even go that way are geared differently. That's why I asked for the disproportionality, because even though the same instance, two different children may get looked at two different ways. One will go this way, one will get sent to you. So that's why I'm just wondering, because I've had conversations with instructors and organizational pieces that they're like, yeah, we're offering this, but we're seeing different responses. Let's just, for example, vaping. There's a harder response for maybe a child of color where it's more of a slap on the wrist for not. So that's why I'm asking, because I think this is wonderful, but just like, the DCF and all that, it's always been disproportionately driven to a certain dynamic, where again, these are all great, don't get me wrong, but that's still that's a disservice to both, right?
Yeah, I mean,
kids
if there's
from a side that can service from these exact same things, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I mean, if there's a, in fact, tomorrow, I'm sure, as Maria and Lamondra are aware, we have it's run through the Center for Children's Advocacy. There's they call it a RED meeting. It's racial and ethnic disparity meeting that we have tomorrow afternoon with a group that works around the state on these issues. And, for us, traditionally having been a direct service provider, we don't see the cases that aren't referred. You know what I'm saying? Like if the school makes a decision to refer one kid to us for a vaping issue, but not another kid, we only, we see the kid that gets referred and we work with them. So I'm not saying what you're identifying is an issue. It's just, it's before it has gotten to us traditionally.
To you, thank you. You guys are doing amazing. This was amazing, but you hit it right on the nail. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Roberts.
First, I want to say thank you, David. I know David as a youth, as a child in Norwalk.
You're getting old when people are now counselors.
Coach Keegan, that was a wonderful idea that you stated. It kind of put me back to when you were my coach, and just to see, we knew that Coach was a cop, but at the same time, like we seen him outside of the uniform on a regular basis, which is wonderful. And we felt better, we felt safe, but at the same time, he gave us lessons. The actual draw that you guys have is wonderful. It just gets back to the concept of every Wednesday, we give back to the city. That has to go through Parks and Recs. So one, you have that relationship already. So with that being said, as a child in Norwalk, growing up in Norwalk, I saw the concept of social, emotional, these things. So now we're coinciding with Parks and Recs to push that towards a sport or an extracurricular activity, something like that that the youth do need, because sometimes they might be focused on a total different aspect in life where you can inherit something in their lives that keeps them active, keeps their mind going. So I love the idea, guys. I think this is wonderful. And of course, you know, to be with Parks and Recs is even a plus as well, you know. But I love how you guys are bringing David's office into everything now and pushing it all together. So I love this idea. Like I said, I appreciate this one. This means a lot. And if we could start incorporating, you know, things of that nature, like Coach Keegan said, like throwing the cops within that situation so that the youth could see a cop that's off duty or a cop that's on duty, but know that that cop is not out to get them. We see what's going on, especially with, you know, our RFP for our Equality for Justice. You know, like we need these type of things because, you know, as a Black male, I still fear for my life when I get pulled over, you know? So we need these type of things so that the youth don't, you know, continue to see this. They need to see that this person is a public servant. This person is supposed to protect and serve, you know? So I do love the whole layout and everything. I appreciate you guys for that. So
Yeah, just as another point real quick, because I know Ray's stewing there, you're getting ready to do his part. Anyway, you know, I have had conversations with Nick Roberts. He had sat on our advisory board as his predecessor has in the past. And, you know, one of the things we have in the past made some referrals to Parks and Rec for kids we were working with. And as Councilman Keegan pointed out, a lot of these are private leagues. There's costs to be part of that. And Nick and I have had some very preliminary conversations about, you know, sometimes you refer kids and the family can't afford to join a private league. It would be awesome for them. And so that gets into, Lamond has mentioned philanthropy work, and Nick has talked about trying to find ways to scholarship kids. And so that's definitely an ongoing area that we would explore, and working with them is there's a lot of kids who could really benefit from some of that program, but there's cost barriers, and how do we mitigate those so that it's not a barrier?
Yeah, I'd just like to add, you know, this is a really well thought out effort, and you know, a real coordinated effort to help not just like at-risk kids, but a lot of kids that just kind of make some bad decisions and need some help and kind of go off the you know, they go wayward and they just need a little help. So this coordinated effort and the focus on restorative justice is so huge, because you know, you keep those at-risk kids out of the court system, and you keep a kid out of jail and save a life. And that helps all of society. So I think this is really incredible work, great presentation, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, council members.
Okay, so let's move on to the next item on the agenda, which is our executive session on the personnel bonus pool and distributions history. I just,
I'm sorry, I'm assuming I can jump off. You want me to jump off at this point?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Have a good evening.
Before I ask for the motion to go into executive session, I just want to point out that there will be no votes taken, no actions taken. So there, you know, for the person taking minutes, we can just let you know what time we come back. So there's no need for you to stay. So with that being said, I will entertain a motion to move into executive session. Mr. Keegan, so moved. All in favor? Okay, it is unanimous. So we need to jump off of this and log into the executive session.
Right. We're good.
Okay, I'm just waiting for the little, I see we're recording, but I don't see the live stream.
Yeah, we're recording it. There's no sense in.
All right. Okay, that's fine. Okay, let the record show that we have come out of executive session at 8:54, during which time no motions were made, no actions were taken. I would like to entertain a motion to adjourn. Ms. Revolus, all in favor? Okay, have a good night, everybody.
Night, everybody.
Good
Right.
night.